All right, so today we're diving into Do It Today by Darius Foro.
Oh, yeah, I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah, this one's all about, ditching procrastination
Hmm.
and taking control of your time. And I know our listeners are always looking for ways to be more productive.
For sure. Who isn't?
Right. But here's the thing that really grabbed my attention. Foro argues that procrastination isn't just about laziness. It's often rooted in fear.
That's interesting. We always think of it as a lack of willpower or something.
Right, like we just need to try harder.
Hmm.
But what if it's our brain trying to protect us?
Protect us from what?
Well, from things that feel scary. Even if they're actually good for us in the long run. Like, think about that feeling you get when you have a big presentation coming up.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
You tell yourself you're just not in the mood to work on it.
Hmm.
But deep down, maybe it's the fear of judgment or the fear of messing up.
That makes a lot of sense. I can definitely relate to that.
And that's where the book gets really interesting. Thoreau calls these little nuggets of wisdom actionable tips. And he suggests we actually take some time to write down the tasks we typically procrastinate on.
Okay, so like make a list.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then really think about what fears might be lurking beneath the surface.
So it's like we're becoming detectives of our own procrastination.
I love that analogy
Mhm.
because once we identify those fears, we can start to address them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, another big thing Thoreau challenges is this idea that we need to wait for the perfect time to take action.
Oh, yeah, the perfect time trap.
Exactly. Have you ever caught yourself saying, I'll start tomorrow when I have more time?
All the time.
Right. But the truth is that perfect time rarely comes.
It's like waiting for all the traffic lights to turn green at once.
Exactly.
Mm.
So instead of waiting, Thoreau encourages us to just start, even if it's with a tiny step. What if instead of staring at that blank page for an hour,
Which I do a lot.
you just committed to outlining the main points for 5 minutes?
Yeah, that feels way less daunting.
Right. It's about shifting our focus from perfection to progress. And even a small step can create momentum, breaking that cycle of procrastination.
It's like getting the ball rolling.
Exactly. And once that ball is rolling, it's much easier to keep it moving.
Okay, so we've talked about fear and the myth of the perfect time.
Right. Now let's tackle another big one. Prioritization.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. But Thoreau has a great tool for this. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix.
That sounds
It's
intense.
not as complicated as it sounds. It's basically a grid with 4 quadrants. And you categorize your tasks based on whether they're urgent and important.
So it helps you visualize what needs your attention right now.
Exactly. Think about your own to-do list. Where would those tasks fall in the matrix? Are you spending your precious time on things that actually move the needle? Or are you getting bogged down in busy work?
That's a good question.
And be honest with yourself here. Is that endless scrolling through social media really a break? Or is it just procrastination disguised as relaxation?
Ouch, that one hit close to home.
It's easy to fall into that trap. But Thoreau challenges us to be ruthless with our time.
So prioritize the tasks that truly align with our goals.
Exactly. And speaking of goals, Thoreau makes a really interesting distinction between goals and systems.
I'm curious to hear about this.
He says that while goals give us a direction to head in, it's the systems we put in place that actually drive progress.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the difference.
It's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just show up on race day without a plan, right?
Definitely not.
You'd have a training schedule, a way to track your mileage, a strategy for fueling your body. Those are all systems that support your goal of running the race.
That's a great analogy.
So instead of just setting a goal, what if we focused on creating daily habits that support that goal? Imagine how much you could accomplish if you carved out just 30 minutes each morning.
For focused, distraction-free work.
Exactly. It's those consistent, focused efforts, supported by a well-designed system, that lead to meaningful progress over time.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this fits together.
And that brings us to another important point Thoreau makes. The importance of discipline over motivation.
Wait, so you're saying motivation isn't enough?
Well, motivation can be fleeting.
Yeah.
It comes and goes. We tend to think we need to feel motivated to take action.
Which I definitely do.
But what if, instead of waiting for motivation, we cultivated discipline through consistent practice?
That's an interesting idea.
Thoreau suggests setting non-negotiable blocks of time for our most important tasks.
And sticking to them no matter what.
Exactly. It might not always be easy, but just like with exercise, the more we practice, the stronger our discipline muscle becomes.
So it's like going to the gym even when you don't feel like it.
Precisely. If you show up consistently, you'll see results.
And speaking of results, Sephora also reminds us to celebrate the small wins along the way.
Yes. It's so easy to get fixated on the big end goal that we forget to acknowledge those smaller achievements.
Which can be so motivating.
Completing that chapter you've been putting off. Finally clearing out your inbox. Making that difficult phone call. These are all wins worth celebrating.
They totally are.
Foro suggests breaking down large tasks into smaller steps and rewarding yourself for completing each one.
That's a great idea. It keeps you motivated and builds momentum.
Exactly. It's like playing a video game. Each level you conquer gets you closer to the ultimate victory.
I like that analogy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, but there's one more key piece I want to touch on before we move on.
Okay, what's that?
Taking ownership of our time.
Ooh, that sounds important.
It is. It goes beyond just scheduling our days or creating to-do lists. It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose how we spend our time, rather than feeling like victims of circumstance.
I think we've all felt that way at some point.
Like our time is being controlled by external forces.
Deadlines, obligations, unexpected events.
Exactly. But Thoreau challenges us to shift our perspective. Instead of feeling like time is something that's happening to us, we can choose to see it as a resource that we consciously manage and direct.
That's a powerful reframe.
It is. And remember that time audit we talked about earlier?
Yeah, where we track how we're actually spending our time.
Well, that's not just about identifying time wasters. It's also about becoming aware of the patterns and how we allocate our time and energy.
So we can make more intentional choices.
Exactly. I remember when I tracked my phone usage for a week.
Oh, no.
I was horrified by how much time I wasted scrolling through social media. But that awareness gave me the power to make different choices.
So it's like shining a light on those unconscious habits.
Exactly. Once we have that awareness, we can start to set boundaries and prioritize the activities that truly matter.
Maybe even delegate or eliminate some of those tasks that aren't serving us.
Precisely. So time ownership isn't about becoming rigid or controlling.
It's about making intentional choices that align with our values and goals.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for how we spend our precious time.
And ensuring that it's being used in a way that supports our overall well-being.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this first segment,
It's been a whirlwind.
but there's so much more to explore. In our next segment, we'll delve into the importance of mindset, the power of self-care, and how to build momentum towards lasting change.
Can't wait. Welcome back. So we've been talking about all these strategies for beating procrastination.
Right, systems, habits, those actionable tips.
Exactly. But now I want to dive into something a little deeper.
Ooh, deeper. Like what?
Mindset.
Mindset. You mean like how we think about procrastination?
Yeah, because Foro says that those thoughts we have can really make a difference.
So it's not just about doing the tasks. It's about believing we can do them.
Exactly. He talks about those limiting beliefs we all carry around.
Like what? I'm not good enough.
That's one. Or I always procrastinate. I'm just not a disciplined person.
Yeah, those are nasty little voices.
They are, and they can really sabotage our productivity.
But how? I mean, they're not physically stopping us from doing things.
Well, think about it. Imagine you're about to start a project.
Yeah.
And that voice in your head whispers, "You're gonna fail. You always do." What happens?
I can already feel the energy draining away.
Right. It's like that voice becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You either avoid the task altogether,
Yeah.
or you go in with half-hearted effort, almost expecting to fail.
Exactly. And Thoreau says these beliefs create a vicious cycle.
So we need to challenge those negative thoughts.
Yes. We need to recognize them and then question their validity.
Okay, so let's say I catch myself thinking, I'm just not disciplined enough.
Right.
What's the next step?
Ask yourself, is it really true that I'm never disciplined? Have there been times when I have stuck to a plan?
So you're forcing yourself to look for evidence that contradicts that thought.
Exactly. You might remember times when you were successful. Maybe you followed a workout routine or met deadlines at work. By focusing on those examples, you weaken the hold that limiting belief has on you.
It's like replacing a shaky old foundation with something stronger.
I like that analogy.
And I love how Thoreau suggests reframing those negative statements. Like instead of saying, I'm terrible at public speaking,
Right.
you might say, I'm still learning and I'll get more confident with practice.
It's subtle, but that shift in language can make a huge difference.
You're moving from I can't to I'm learning,
Exactly. It's called a growth mindset.
which is all about seeing potential for improvement.
Yes. And this reminds me of something else Foru said. about how our brains are wired to focus on the negative.
Really? Why would they do that?
He says it's an ancient survival mechanism.
Makes sense. I guess back then we had to be on the lookout for danger.
Right. But the good news is we can actually train ourselves to focus on the positive.
To see possibilities instead of limitations.
Exactly. And that's crucial for tackling procrastination.
Because it's not just about doing the tasks.
Yeah,
It's about believing we can do them.
exactly. And now that we're talking about taking charge, I want to introduce another concept Foro talks about:
Oh yeah, what's that?
time ownership.
Time ownership. Sounds like I'm the CEO of my own schedule.
That's the idea. But it's more than just managing your calendar. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you spend your time.
Instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of external circumstances.
Exactly. We all have those days when it feels like we're just reacting to everything.
Work deadlines, family obligations.
Yeah,
That unexpected call from the plumber.
right. But Foro challenges us to take a step back and ask ourselves, how much of my time am I truly choosing to spend this way? And how much is dictated by things I feel I have to do?
That's a tough question.
It is, but it's an important one. And remember that time audit we talked about earlier?
Oh yeah, where we track how we're actually spending our time.
This is where it comes in handy. It's not just about eliminating distractions. It's about becoming aware of those bigger patterns and how we allocate our time.
I remember when I started tracking my spending, I was shocked by how much money was going towards things I didn't even care about.
It's the same with time. We often spend it on things that don't truly matter to us.
But once we see those patterns, we can start to make more conscious choices.
Exactly. We can ask ourselves, are these activities aligned with my values and goals? Can I delegate or eliminate any of these tasks? Am I saying yes to things I should be saying no to?
Wow, that's a lot to consider.
It is. But it's worth it. Because when we take ownership of our time, we take ownership of our lives.
So it's not about becoming rigid or controlling about our schedule.
No, it's about making intentional choices that reflect what's important to us.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset and time ownership. But what about those times when life throws us a curveball?
Ah, yes. The unexpected events that disrupt our carefully crafted plans.
Because, let's face it, things happen. Kids get sick, projects get delayed. Sometimes we just need a mental health day.
And that's okay. Foro reminds us that it's fine to deviate from the plan sometimes.
Phew. That's good to hear. Because I was starting to feel like I needed to be perfect all the time.
No, not at all. The key is to not let those disruptions completely derail your progress.
Okay, so how do we do that?
One strategy Foro suggests is having a backup plan.
A backup plan.
Yeah, like if, you tend to get sick during certain times of year, you might create a list of tasks you can easily do from home.
Oh, that's a great idea. It's like having a contingency plan for when life inevitably throws a wrench in the works.
Exactly. And another helpful tip is to build in buffer time.
Buffer time.
Instead of scheduling back-to-back meetings, leave a 15-minute gap between them.
Oh, I like that. That way, if one meeting runs over or you need a few minutes to regroup, you're not immediately thrown off schedule.
Right. It's like giving yourself permission to breathe.
And if you end up with some unexpected free time, you can use it to catch up on emails or just take a few minutes to recharge.
Building that flexibility into our schedules helps us navigate those unexpected challenges.
Without feeling completely overwhelmed.
Exactly. And speaking of taking care of ourselves, Foro also emphasizes the importance of self-care.
I'm so glad he brought that up.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to nurture our own well-being.
Especially in our always-on culture.
Exactly. We're constantly bombarded with messages about productivity and optimization, but we often neglect the most important resource, ourselves.
It's like trying to run a marathon without fueling your body properly.
You might make it to the finish line, but you'll be completely depleted.
So what does Foro suggest?
He views self-care as any activity that nourishes our physical, emotional, and mental health.
So things like exercise, getting enough sleep, spending time in nature.
Connecting with loved ones, pursuing hobbies, or simply taking some time for relaxation.
These are the things that fill our cups and allow us to show up as our best selves,
And he encourages us to schedule self-care into our routines.
like we would any other important appointment.
Exactly. It's not a luxury. It's an investment in our well-being.
And ultimately our productivity.
By prioritizing self-care, we're not only taking care of ourselves, but we're also setting ourselves up for greater success in all areas of our lives.
Okay, so we've talked about mindset, time ownership, flexibility, and self-care. But how do we actually take action and start building momentum towards lasting change?
Well, Foro suggests starting small, setting realistic goals. And of course, celebrating those small wins along the way.
Okay, that sounds manageable. But even with all the right strategies in place, I think we all struggle with accountability sometimes.
That's true. It's easy to set goals when we're feeling motivated, but then life happens and we lose steam.
That's where having external support can be so valuable.
Absolutely. We often rely on willpower and self-discipline, but those can be fickle and unreliable. Accountability provides that extra push.
So how do we build more accountability into our lives?
Foro suggests finding an accountability partner.
Someone who checks in with us regularly.
Exactly. Someone who celebrates our wins and gently nudges us when we're slacking.
That makes a lot of sense. I've found that having someone to share my goals with makes a huge difference.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner.
Sometimes you need someone to give you a little tough love.
That's right. And joining a group with similar goals can also be incredibly motivating.
Just like that sense of camaraderie and shared purpose.
Exactly. And of course, there are those apps and websites that can help us track our progress and connect with others.
The key is to find accountability strategies that resonate with you and incorporate them into your routine.
Exactly. Whether it's partnering with a friend, joining a group, or utilizing technology, that external support can make all the difference.
Okay, so we've talked about external strategies, but I think the most important takeaway from all of this is the power of mindset.
It all comes back to that internal foundation. We've discussed challenging limiting beliefs, reframing negative thoughts, and cultivating a growth mindset.
Right. But what are some other ways we can cultivate a more positive and productive mindset?
Thoreau suggests practicing gratitude, focusing on our strengths, and surrounding ourselves with positive influences.
Gratitude, I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in what we lack. But when we take time to appreciate the good things, it shifts our perspective.
Exactly. And focusing on our strengths helps build confidence and resilience. Instead of dwelling on our weaknesses or comparing ourselves to others, we can celebrate those things we're good at.
And our social circle matters too, right?
Absolutely. Surrounding ourselves with positive influences of people who uplift us can make a world of difference.
And what about the information we consume?
That's important too. The books we read, the podcasts we listen to, the social media we scroll through.
Are we feeding our minds with content that nourishes us?
Or are we exposing ourselves to negativity and self-doubt?
That's a great point. We need to be mindful of what we're letting into our minds.
By being intentional about those influences, we create a more supportive environment for our goals.
And as we cultivate a mindset of growth and possibility, we unlock our full potential and create a life that feels aligned, fulfilling, and joyful. All right, welcome back. It's a final part of our deep dive into Do It Today.
I can't believe how much we've already covered, from the psychology of procrastination to building systems.
And let's not forget mindset, self-care,
Yeah,
even the physics of productivity.
exactly. It's been quite a journey. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Thoreau talks about aligning our actions with our values.
Values. Now that sounds deep. Like, how do our values tie into all of this?
Well, think of your values as your guiding principles, the things that are most important to you in life.
Okay, so the things that really matter to me deep down.
Exactly. And when we're not clear about our values, it's easy to get sidetracked or pursue goals that don't really resonate with us.
Yeah, I can see that. You might achieve a goal and still feel kind of empty, like something's missing, because it wasn't really what you cared about.
Exactly. It's like climbing the ladder of success, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall.
Ouch, that's a good one.
So the question is, how do we figure out what our core values actually are?
Yeah, that's a big question. Any tips for figuring that out?
Thoreau has some great exercises in the book. One is to think about the people you admire most.
Okay, like role model.
Exactly. And then identify the qualities you admire about them.
So if I admire someone for their courage or their creativity, those might be clues about my own values.
Precisely. You can also think about times in your life when you felt most fulfilled.
Okay, so like when I feel really energized and excited about something.
Yeah. And then ask yourself what values were at play during those experiences.
So if I felt really proud after finishing a challenging project, maybe achievement is a core value for me.
That's the idea. Once you have a clearer understanding of your values, you can start making choices that are aligned with them.
Okay, so it's not just about identifying them, it's about actually living them out.
Exactly. If you value creativity, but you're stuck in a job that feels stifling, maybe it's time to explore other options.
Yeah, or if family is a core value, but you're always working late, maybe it's time to reevaluate your priorities.
It's about making those tough choices and setting boundaries to honor what's truly important to you.
When our choices reflect our values, it just feels right.
You feel more aligned, more energized, more motivated.
It's like everything clicks into place.
Exactly. It's like having that internal compass guiding you in the right direction.
So aligning our actions with our values, it's like taking ownership of our time, but on a deeper level.
It's about taking ownership of our lives.
Creating a life that reflects who we truly are and what we care about most.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Do It Today, I'm amazed by how much we've learned.
From practical tips to really deep insights.
It's not just about getting things done. It's about creating a meaningful life.
And that's what makes this book so powerful.
It gives us the tools to understand ourselves better.
And to make choices that lead to a more fulfilling life.
So to all our listeners out there, we want to leave you with a question. What's one small step you can take today?
That aligns with your values and moves you closer to the life you want.
It could be anything. Making that phone call you've been putting off.
Starting that creative project you've been dreaming of.
Spending some quality time with loved ones.
Even just taking a few minutes for yourself to relax and recharge.
Remember, even small steps can lead to big changes.
So take that step today.
Embrace the power of action.
And watch as your life transforms.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Do It Today. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep taking action.